Hello everyone, my name is Devo, and today I'm making a video about the idea of the lowest denominator in tabletop. I'll get to what that is in a moment, but for now, the reason why I wanted to make this video is because as an idea slash concept, it really helps me improve in a lot of ways, both in regards to the game, myself, and maybe some other stuff in my peripheral that could really help me out. But to get down to it, what is the lowest denominator? So, in terms of outside of the game, this term is used a lot to, well, for one, in math, but we're not talking math today. For one, mainly lowest denominator is kind of used as like a derogatory thing. Like, for example, someone could say, like, oh, that movie only appeals to the lowest denominator, or oh, this music is made for like the lowest denominator, meaning it's not very focused and it's not very good, or it has that quality because it's trying to appeal to a mass audience rather than focus in and become something like maybe a little bit more unique. But in regards to tabletop, the lowest denominator can be something like the players, the DM slash GM, the person running the game, or it could be the system itself. And it comes in a lot of different forms, and within itself, it's not like a mathematical equation you do to get to someone. You could do that in, like, say, an MMO where you're looking at like exact stats, and you could say like, oh, the DPS is the lowest in the group. You're our lowest denominator. But in a tabletop sense, it's much more subjective, and it varies at different levels as well. For example, if it was a group of a bunch of new people playing D&D for the first time, they're all basically lowest denominators because they don't know the rules, they don't know exactly what's going on. They're still learning the game, so to call them lowest denominators is not really fair. And let's say in a group where everyone is very experienced, very dedicated, very serious, someone being the lowest denominator could be, I don't know, just like a few fractions off of being better than someone else. And that's not really fair. Lowest denominator to me comes in a lot of forms that are very much, I would say, willfully ignorant, or maybe a particular habit or behavior that's going on that someone may not realize or they're doing, but they don't really care. It's something that can be fixed with a lot of conscious effort. So typically, lowest denominators, or someone that's acting like a lowest denominator, is typically someone who I would say is not making enough effort in essence, right? But you could say that about a lot of things. So I'm going to get into a few like categories and examples of it and how to avoid it here. So for examples, players. I'm just going to name off quickly some examples of how someone that is a player in the game could be a lowest denominator. And one of the biggest examples could be just simply lack of engagement. Like they don't really care about the game, they don't care about themselves, the other players, or even the setting. And generally, they just seem like they ultimately don't want to be there. Another example would be, this one's very common. I'm sure everyone's ran into this at least once. But someone that is making, let's say, combat unnecessarily longer by not knowing what to do or not knowing their own stuff. Now, it would be one thing if someone was like, oh, I need some clarification about this. But let's say someone is, I don't know, playing a wizard and they're like, oh, I want to cast a spell. And the DM says, okay, what's your spell save? Difficult to check. And then you just see like you you just see drool coming out of their mouth. It basically means they don't know what's going on. They don't know what their own character is supposed to do or what you're even saying to them. And it makes things longer. Like I said, it would be one thing if they were new to the game, but the longer you've been in it, the less of an excuse you have for these kind of behaviors or just lack of effort on your own part. Because now not only are you slowing things down to a crawl, but you're making the whole game last longer, and quite frankly, it comes down to a matter of time. We only have so much time to play, and we're wasting it on something that you've been playing as for months. So, not saying you're a POS for it, but you are acting like a lowest denominator right now. Kind of going back to the whole lack of engagement thing, if they're just like easily distracted, like let's say, I don't know, someone's on their phone or he's on their phone or they're looking up stuff or it's not their turn yet, so as a result, they just like fuck off and do whatever. That's not really fair either, especially to others because just because it's not your turn yet or you're not the main focus at the moment doesn't mean that's time for you to slack off or that's time for you to like look away and I don't know, get into your head and think about what you're going to eat later. That kind of goes back that kind of leads me into my next point here about hogging the spotlight. If you're someone that does this, then you're not really being considerate of others as well, and as a result, it drags the whole group down. And this also bleeds into ignoring group objectives. For example, if everyone is here, let's say in a dungeon to rescue someone, and they're doing something off to the side, like I don't know, painting on a wall. Let's just say I don't know that maybe or maybe not. Um, it's kind of wasting time, and that's not what everyone's there to do. It would be one thing if it was like, oh, there's this thing over here that everyone knows my character is really interested in, so let me, take a moment to investigate it now or ask if I can come back later. That would be one thing. But to, like I said, within the context of saving someone, if you're just kind of dilly dallying off to the side, then you're wasting time and you're a bit of a nuisance, to be quite honest. Oh, and by the way, when I talk about some of these examples, they a lot of these come from both me and from what I've seen other people do. So it's not just me criticizing other people and being like, "Oh, I hate you," blah 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 blah. Some of these I've been guilty of before, whether when I first started the game or first started playing, or even now. I've been playing for almost like a decade, and I come across some of these behaviors that I'm guilty of. Like I said, it could just simply be like a moment of lapse in effort, and it just happens, right? But it happens. Generally, to avoid being a lowest denominator player, be engaged, take notes, care what other people are doing. And that doesn't just mean like, oh, I'm going to be quiet for a moment, let you talk, but like take a genuine interest. Try to actually see yourself getting into their character or making your own character interested in what they're doing or whatnot. That's a great way to go about it, especially since it keeps it within the game. Um, Another example could be something along the lines of like, oh, not only am I taking notes, staying off my phone, and getting engaged with the other characters, but I know how my stuff works. So when combat comes around, I'm not going to be the one that's like left behind, or I'm not going to be the one that's holding everyone up. There's nothing wrong with, let's say you got to do some crazy action on your turn, or you got to do a bunch of dice rolling on your turn or whatever for whatever reason. That's fine. That's just part of the game. It's another thing when you're asking nonstop, like I said before, like you don't know how something works, or you're trying to do something completely ridiculous because you're not paying attention and you don't know what's going on. But moving on here to examples of how dungeon masters or game masters, whatever you call them, how they can lag behind. As someone who has DM'd for a long time myself, I am especially critical of myself. And I won't lie, sometimes people will criticize me and I won't even listen. But that's part of the issue right there is that you could be someone who's unwilling to take criticism. And criticism comes in a lot of forms. A lot of it can be either constructive or unconstructive. I might get into another video about that. But largely you need to listen to constructive advice. And if you don't want to listen to advice in terms of like, oh, I know I'm new and I need like all the help I can get, if you at least make it to where you are listening, but you're willing to say, oh, I believe in my own methodology, but I'm willing to hear you out. If you think there's a problem, that's more than enough to keep you from being the lowest denominator. And on top of that, calling for unnecessary roles as a DM, I'm sure in the mind of some people, it's like a very funny or haha epic kind of thing to do. Like, oh, that's so random that he failed opening the door, even though it was just like all he's got to do is push it. But at the same time, it's very frustrating. And quite honestly, going back to what I said earlier, it's just a waste of time. We only have so much time to play. I don't need you to roll to see if you can open the door when it's unlocked and there's nothing barricading it. That's not the issue. That should never be an issue of doing anything like that. Like, oh, I woke up out of bed, I'm gonna tie my shoes. Oops, I got a critical fail. I fall forwards and land on my face. Sure, it could be kind of funny, but ultimately, it's a waste of time, and that's not what the people are here for. To waste time in such a way where it belittles someone or just checking for like meaningless things like that. Another example here would be being both unprepared and overprepared. There's people who are unprepared, and unless they've got the skill for it, and I doubt they do, you can't improvise literally everything. I don't think that's possible, because otherwise, very quickly, inconsistencies are going to catch up to you and make you look like a fool. But being unprepared, you can't be unprepared. It's one thing if you didn't plan for everything. I would say that's a bonus if you didn't plan for everything. But it's another to just not have anything ready at all, and you're just like, well, I got 5 minutes till my game starts. Let me look at Reddit for like ideas or whatever, or like, oh, let me, I don't know, Google epic random ideas or whatever. On the flip side of that, being over prepared, that means partially people think this is like a boogeyman word. Railroading can be good and bad sometimes, but that's not the focus here. But this is a case of over railroading where if someone doesn't go within the exact planning of yours, you just tell them, no, you can't do that. Or it's just the idea that, oh, if the players go off and do something, you're like, oh, don't do that at all. I don't have anything there for you. And sometimes that's fine to say, like, oh, hey guys, like, I don't have anything planned for that. But, like, clearly there's this other thing going on. That's fine. That's just you being honest and saying, like, hey guys, I'm not ready for that, or I didn't expect you to take this on this early. Could you guys go for this instead? That would be fine as long as consequences are represented. For example, if by taking on this issue for whatever reason earlier doesn't affect the other one, that's fine. It would be another thing if, oh, because they went and took on this issue, now the other one has like deteriorated. That would be a whole different circumstance. And like I said, a lot of this advice is very context heavy. Tabletop isn't like scientific, but generally, as an idea, trying to over railroad, over plan, it's a waste of time both for the DM and frankly, it ruins things for the players. It's not spontaneous, and you're not making a story together. And frankly, it just kind of sucks. A lot of ways to avoid this stuff. You Once again, it goes back to this core issue is respecting time. By not calling for unnecessary checks, you're saving everyone's time. You're getting to what really matters or the real threats that require the actual checks. Those are when you actually need to check to see if they do something correctly because it's like a challenge rather than, oh, I'm going to open this door, or oh, I'm going to take a drink of water. That's a completely different matter. Another thing is you got to strike a middle ground with yourself in terms of creation and how far you can go ahead and not far, or how far you can go ahead and how much you have to like reserve yourself. It's not bad to plan ahead, but you have to keep in mind that you got to stay flexible. So staying flexible is really important here. Also, a few more issues I believe I forgot to cover. One of them is DMPCs, or people that are immersion breaking, I guess you could say. So a DMPC would be someone who is so much cooler and better than the PCs, and the PCs exist to serve this guy. Or no matter what you do, the DMPC is always like the top guy, or he's the biggest badass in the room. Generally speaking, you could maybe do this for one character, but it can't be some random Joe. If you did this for like a king and all the players are like subservient to the king or whatever, that's fine, I would say, for the most part. But if these guys are walking on the road and then they come across one guy and he's like, "Ho ho, I dare you all to fight me," and for some reason this guy is like dressed like a farmer peasant, but is somehow able to beat all of them, and then I don't know, he does like a he does like a spin in place with like a robe, and all of a sudden he's like Prince Charming, 6'5". I'm like a billionaire. Oh, he's also the prince and royalty, by the way. Then pretty very quickly everyone's just gonna hate that guy, or people just might even say, "Oh, we were never meant to win against that guy because he's the DMPC." Also, not respecting your own that also extends into not respecting your own players because you want to belittle them, you want to do this to them, and it's like if they knew what they were getting into, uh, like like it wasn't even a matter of like, oh, it's like an ambush. If it was just like if they knew what they were fighting, then that's fair. If they get their butt beat, or if they lose, or if they win, then that's all fair game. But if it's for some reason they're like, oh, I'm gonna fight this peasant, and I don't know, they're all like high level adventurers, and somehow this peasant beats him back, and he reveals he's like the king, like I said, then pretty quickly they're gonna get very disillusioned and dissatisfied with your game, and you just simply don't have to do that. But to move on here just a little bit more, some examples of how systems can be the lowest denominator. Typically, this isn't the issue, as I would say most of the time people are already playing what I would consider like a good system. But I will give an example myself. A couple years back, I tried running a Pokemon game for my brother. And within this game, I just Googled Pokemon tabletop system, went with the first thing, I read it a little bit. I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. And after really trying to play it and learn it, I was like, wow, I can't do anything spontaneously. I can't create anything on the fly. I have to do specific math equations to generate just like a random NPC. I can't just like pluck and throw at the page, or I can't just open the book and be like, okay, here's like a mob I can just use. Like for example, if you're playing like D&D and D and you're like, oh, I want a goblin. Boom, the book has a goblin for you. You just simply look at it and put it down. It's ready to go. Whereas in this system, you had so much to calculate, and then even then, it was not easy to calculate. So as a result, I went and found another system, and to this day, I still use the system. That's how much better it is. Um, it allowed me to be spontaneous. Everything was there. Character creation was super smooth, straightforward. To even create an NPC, it was smooth and straightforward. So that's why I really ended up going with that one. But that leads me into a lot of the examples I'm getting into here. Just unnecessary bloat, bad design, both the book and the system itself. And there's a few other things that I'm going to get into that isn't quite related to the story, but going back to the whole unnecessary bloat. So in this system, the bad one I was talking about, the Pokemon one, there was a lot of back and forth in terms of you would take 2 steps forward into making something, and then now you got to go to a step back because, oh, because you unlocked something back there. Now you got to go do that because it's going to influence down the road. That would be fine if it was done at maybe very small intervals and it was something as simple of like, oh, you now get a +2 here. Just scratch that off real quick. No, it wasn't that at all. It was you go back, you change the numbers here, and because you changed the numbers there, you got to recalculate everything going back up. That really sucked. Just way too much bloat, frankly, bad design. And unless that's just the kind of people you are, the kind of players, because, then again, a lot of tabletop is very subjective. Even what I'm talking about right now is kind of subjective in a way. But I feel like foundationally, that was kind of bad design, and I was not a big fan of it. Um, An example of bad book design. I love the system, but I really hate how the book was made. I'm a big fan of the 20th anniversary edition, or V20, of Vampire the Masquerade. Now, like I said, I love the setting. I love everything about it. Even the system, I like a lot of it. But the book design is very bad. You'll read maybe like a page of lore, and then it'll give you somewhere in between all of that, like a page of actual like system info that you need to learn of like, oh, how this works. And it would be fine if it was cordoned off better. I don't have any written examples or I don't have anything on hand at the moment, but for example, you want to read how ability works, and it would say something along the lines of like, "Oh, you manifest like the darkness, and you become this behold," all this other stuff, and then afterwards, it'll give you um, the whole system mechanics of how you're supposed to use ability or how this is represented mechanically speaking. That's fine in some places, but it does it way too much, and as a result, it causes a lot of bloat within its own formatting, and it just makes learning everything very confusing. Also, generally, the layout of the book is very poor. If you can't just do A, B, C, D, and then your character's done. There's a lot of flipping back and forth you got to do. There's a lot of, oh, I got to jump to this very end of the book now, or oh, I got to jump to this section of the book now. And don't get me wrong, part of it is because the book is very extensive in what it tries to cover. It covers a lot of core things as well as including a lot of supplementary stuff, which I really like. But the issue is they almost compacted all together. So as a result, you get the core confused with supplementary. And I feel like for a lot of beginner players as well, that'll confuse them as well. And I think overall that's just bad design. And looking back on it, how to avoid a lot of this stuff. I'm not a system designer. I've tried, not very successful, not proud of it. But I would say to avoid a lot of this, try to cut down on the bloat. Try to make it to where if someone wants to create something, very easily you lay out the process of, one, two, three, boom, you're done, you can play. And simply make it to where if I can find the page where the ability or the thing is on, I need to be able to go to that page, immediately find it, and instantly see the mechanical info for it, rather than, oh, let me sort through this little lore tidbit and it's going to tell me a little bit about what the ability is like. Oh, and then somewhere in the middle of that is the actual mechanical info. That's really confusing, and not only that, it's very just disruptive, especially if you need to look up something on the fly or if someone's trying to learn something because that's a lot more reading you'd have to do. And it also confuses a lot of beginner people because, like I said before, some of the lore is getting mixed up with the mechanics. And, while the paragraph might say, oh, you become like the manifest of darkness. Okay, well, what the hell does that mean mechanically? Right? Or what does that mean in terms of in play, right? That's why keeping these things separate and keeping the mechanics first with maybe a little bit of lore or if none or flavor or whatever, come make it happen later, and or maybe don't let it happen at all. At the end of the day, imagination's king. So you putting down what it's happening when you use this ability, it's a little I would say low bar in my opinion. But to wrap things up here, because I feel like I've been rambling, especially in these last two sections. If you've made it this far, I'm assuming you're at least committed to either watching this video or maybe you actually want to improve yourself. And that leads me into the so what question. So what? Why does any of this matter? Why even make this video? Who cares, right? I would say there's a lot to take away here. If you're kind of listening and having an inner dialogue with yourself about a lot of what's being presented here, is that generally the core principles I'm getting at here for a lot of this stuff is not only stuff that you can apply to your games yourself, but you as a person. And in a lot of senses when it comes to tabletop, it is a reflection of you as a person. If you're someone who's very easily distracted or, can't take anything serious, that's you as a person. That's not because of the system or the game or, whatever. That's you as a player slash GM not, willing to make that effort or, not finding something you truly want to do. So as a result, it brings everyone down with you. And generally, you don't want to be that guy. I especially don't want to be that person either. That's why I feel like when I look and think about a lot of this stuff, it really makes my games better, and I feel like it gets me more enjoyment. So even if you don't want to improve as a person, if you at least apply these principles or ideas that I'm discussing here to your game, you're at least going to have more fun. So with that, I'm just going to wrap everything up and say thank you for watching the video. If you made it this far, see ya.